February 20th to order at 6 o'clock. And I see that we're all present. That's great. Thank you. Item 2, please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have anybody here or signed up for citizens' comment? Okay. Item 4A, approval of the minutes for December 16th, 2025. Does the commission have any corrections or comments on the minutes? If no, may I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item B, Utility Department Monthly Report. Stephen, floor is yours.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the month of December, we pumped 60.56 acre feet out of the Edwards with a year-to-date total 383.96. And we had left was 13.92 acre feet at the end of the year of the Edwards, so we didn't go over. Edwards is still in stage 4 restrictions. We are in stage 2. All distribution samples passed for the month. We had a water loss of 4.5%. Conducted 318 work orders, 38 locates, 1 meter replacement. Total portal customers was 943, up 4 from November. Meter daily readability percentages was 98.13% for 1,687 assigned meters. No main breaks reported, no new leak adjustments. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So we had a small freeze last weekend. I think we have a bigger one coming this weekend. So just wanted to get some kind of a rundown of what are the precautions we go through for preparing for those types of events to make sure the water keeps flowing.
Okay. A lot of it's wrapping all the pipes, mainly the backflow preventers out in the front yard, because those seem to get hit the worst during a good freeze. They do sell drip arresters for faucets that'll go off once the temperature gets low. And it'll start dripping by itself, but other people sometimes leave their water spigots dripping outside and whatnot. But then again, it will trigger our AMI system, so it will, sometimes there will be a notification that there's a leak, but in reality, it's just the people leaving their drippers on, so that's something to remember. All of our plants currently have generators that have generators on. That's going to keep the plants going in case there's a deep freeze. Everything has been wrapped and double wrapped because of 2021. We kind of do everything a little bit double time on wrapping. And then, of course, we have extra sand we had placed in our shop in case we ever have to sand roads if they do have ice on the roads and everything. So then if anybody has any issues with their water during that freeze, they can call our after hours line and somebody will be out there to investigate it or help them out.
Sir, what was the root cause why your volume over the 4.5 is not the highest of this year? Is going to happen outside of what's normal?
Couldn't say. I mean, sometimes whenever the less water you're pumping, the percentages go up. And then when the more water you're pumping, the less the percentage, the better percentage you get, but I'm not really sure. There could be something out there that we just haven't discovered yet.
And also for the water, for the cubic yards we turned back over to SAWS, how close were we to our projected end of the year cutoff?
Oh, what we had? Well, our normal is, what was it, about 13 acre feet? That's all we had left. Or we start off with 653.8287 acre feet.
what was the projected cutoff that we were gonna make? Did we make it, or were we over or below it?
We were below it. We were shooting for 20 acre feet, and then that 20 would have been a buffer
Okay.
in case there's a projection.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple items related to the department. One, Michelle sent all of us a very interesting note that is water loss adjustments and the great progress that you've made, the city's made. The highlight is 2020, there were 77 requests for almost $21,000 in refunds for water losses. In 2025, there were 20 total requests for a little more than $1,000. That's really astounding, and thank you. And Stephen, and all the things that you've briefed us on in the meetings, jumping on things, getting things taken care of, getting people to take care of their portals. I had a faucet that was dripping due to the cold weather, and I got an alert, and I knew just what it was, and it caught it at 5 gallons an hour. So it's very sensitive and very accurate. You just have to be signed up to the portal. The other one, sort of related to this, you got an email from Michelle. The Edwards Aquifer newsletter, I get it periodically. It was very interesting, a lot of good stuff going on there. If you see this thing, I think it was just a PDF attachment, but if you want to get the live newsletter, just go to the Edwards Aquifer Authority site and ask for news drop, NEWS space drop, and then you can just put in your email address, you can get a quarterly newsletter on what's going on with the Edwards Authority. Anything else for Stephen or Michelle? Okay. Item 2, items applicable to the Water Commission discussed at the January 7th City Council meeting. There really was nothing other than Hank Crippen, the city engineer, said that the commission and the city are working on the capital improvement plan and the wastewater ordinance, but other than that, there was really nothing of relevance, unless there's anything else that, Jim, you picked up on or anything. Okay. Item 3, the 2025 to 2045 water system capital improvement plan. This is obviously something that we've been working on. Just kind of a suggestion on format would be to ask from Tri-Hydro, Hank Crippen, and McKinley Jackson to give us a briefing and an overview to bring us all up to speed. The first draft, not everybody had for a very long period of time to review. This one we've all had for a good amount of time, and really appreciate that. We'll do the overview, and then I'd like to suggest that we move as much as possible, kind of section through section, so we're not jumping around, and see if we can get through the document tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Pohl. I have a PowerPoint presentation also coming up, but I did want to apologize for not being here last month. I've prepared for this for months, and the flu doesn't care about what you prepare for. So, appreciate your patience with us. And Jason did a great job at running through this last December. But I'll do a brief run through again. Basically, what we were tasked to do is to develop a 20-year capital improvements list, projects list, knowing that the next steps would be impact fee analysis and rate studies and that type of thing. But we were tasked to develop a guidance document with the best information we have developing these priorities, and this will be revisited on an annual or biannual basis to reprioritize as we go. But we have to start somewhere, and that's where we got this 20-year capital improvement list. How we came about that, we started off with previous reports. We built off of that, so you may see that from past reports, there are a lot of projects in here that were in previous reports. Those projects are still there and still prioritized through this. So we basically updated the model. We met with staff multiple times. We identified some other critical areas that we think could be of great value to the city, and developed this list that also included calibration, which we have gone through since and also updated. So some updates from the last time that we presented. I did listen to the December commission meeting, and there were things discussed about, concerns about more of the why, make the report more clear, verify the calibration, and provide more time for review. So that last one, I hope that getting this out a little more in advance, achieved that. As far as discussing more of the why, I think this report was just a lot to digest, especially in a 3-4 day period. But I did go through and make sure that the sections were talking a little more with each other. I think that was something that helped clarify, hey, this is, discussed more in section 4.5 or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot more of that included. It's also referencing back to the back, hey, if this section has, if there's a supportive document in the back, this is where it's at now. So those are some changes that were done. As far as the calibration goes, we received some flow tests that didn't quite match in I think we received those back in June, and we ultimately decided not to use those, but since then we went back in December, had some flow tests redone, and they basically came in within 2 PSI of our model, so that's extremely accurate, and we were very pleased with those. And that level of precision is really just the instrument they were using to read it. So I'd say that's pretty dang accurate for our calibration on it. So we're feeling really good about how that extra effort came out. And that kind of more verified these types of things. So some other sections, other pieces that were addressed, Oak Rush, that road was on Google Earth, but it's not a real road. We just clumped that with Cedar Branch, and there was actually a slight cost savings by clumping that water project with the Cedar Branch project. And they were in the same 5-year takes and similar age, so it made perfect sense. And then there was just a lot of clarity changes. We did add a percentage of total length of pipe within the system based on the age. That was in Appendix A2, so that kind of gives you a little more of percentage breakdown of where your ages are on this. And really from that, I think that we can, open it up to questions, go section by section. Again, next steps we were looking at for this city, we believe that impact fee analysis would be appropriate, as well as, a rate study. But, for right now, the intent is to get this guidance document out there and have a good understanding of what lies ahead for the next 20 years. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. We can go by, if there's specific section questions, I'm open to however you want to go about it from here.
Okay, thank you, Hank. Before we get into the questions, I've done a little thinking about what the role of the commission is with this document. We're used to revising ordinances, approving them, sending them to the city council with our recommendation for approval, water loss adjustments, variance, and so on. This one, the more I thought about it, is a little different animal in that it's a living document, it's a study, and I'm open certainly for conversation on this, but I think our job is to determine, is the document complete? In other words, does it encompass the system of Garden Ridge? And that's where I think we should have some good discussion tonight. The completeness, and then also accuracy. The modeling was a big step. That was one of the points I had, is let's make sure the model's working right. And that's great that the numbers converged. That, accuracy of 100% is perfect, but tomorrow it'll be 95% because something's going to change. And that it is accurate as it needs to be for the city council, the city manager, the finance manager, everybody in the city to make good decisions, I think should be our goal. So with that said, I'm not sure there's yes, this is perfect, or no, go back, work on this for next month. That we need to make sure, is it complete and is it as accurate as it needs to be? So those are just sort of my thoughts as I looked at this document versus ordinances or other things that we typically have in front of us. So questions or comments on that point? Does that seem to be a point of agreement within the commission? Okay, good. At that point, like I had said maybe just go hand over hand by section and in no particular order. Please, let's air comments, questions, and just see where we are tonight.
Thanks, Bill. I got a couple of comments that I'd like to speak to. As mentioned at the last meeting about revisiting this document, I really think that there should be some sort of schedule put in here. We should revisit this every 5 years or annually touch it up, or something that could be budgeted for, you know, that we can set a milestone and budget for that. That's kind of a, I know it was mentioned last time, but I think it's pretty important to have a checklist somewhere to say, okay, we are going to revisit our street plan CIP, our water plan CIP, and whatever, garbage or whatever else, solid waste, and then put them on off years, maybe, I don't know, but, or put them all in the same year. Have every commission work on them on the same year, and they get updated every 5 years on zeros and fives or whatever it is.
Okay.
My second thought on this, I really had to go back to Stephen's report to see what our water rights were. So water rights or pumping authority out of the Trinity or the Edwards. I think we could put that in the introduction or probably in the introduction to say this is our water rights for Garden Ridge, this is where they're derived from. And then go back in the history of it and reference that exact document that gives us that approval. So it's more of a reference document that where we get our water from.
Does that exist anywhere else? I mean, we all know what they are. I mean, the drought ordinance that we worked on this summer made much reference to that. Is it covered elsewhere, or is it appropriate to add that, and is it possible?
I can work with Stephen on, and finding that agreement, but I think
Okay.
he's pulled it up in front of me before, so I'm pretty sure
All
we've
right.
looked at that before.
Okay. Good.
Stephen, is that correct? Am I correct in that statement?
Yeah, or you
For
can go
Edwards.
to the Edwards Aquifer website and review all the list of everybody that has permits for the Edwards withdrawal and just kind of add them up.
Okay. My question from the city's perspective, is that something that should be in this document, or is it almost I call it a quasi-legal document that we actually have documented somewhere the rights to this water? I'm probably more comfortable with Edwards, less so with Trinity, which is an unregulated source.
I mean, it'd be a good reference to have at the front of it during the pumping portions of the document,
Okay.
just for
All right,
reference
okay.
right off the top. So it's
Okay.
in case, and then have a review process if we ever acquire more or less, just update it so often.
Okay.
That gets to the point of it, Stephen, is if you know the acre feet that you're allowed per year, and then you have a population growth or explosion on it, then you can just say, do I have enough water on a macro level? That's kind of what we would be, okay, how much water do we have rights for? How many people have we grown by? Do we have enough water? If we check that off at the very beginning, then this document, then we'll worry about pipe sizes, right? My next comment was about saws. Big year with saws, like that connection agreement. I'd like to see that somewhere in here, like referenced as a redundancy inside the system, just to acknowledge it, where it's at, what year it was put in. You know, I think it's a big deal for Garden Ridge to have a redundancy that people worked hard on, and I think it could go in this document. I did see, is it okay if I keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Power on here, there was a project in the back about power and generation. I only saw one back there on that. I know we gotta have dual source of power for TCEQ guidelines, but Didn't see anything else about generators or power backup or any of that, or anything about the power system to the water supply. So I don't know if that's something we would address in here or a CIP for overall overhead underground. I don't know how, Ryan, you want to break that out, but I'm not sure at the site locations like where we have GSTs or elevated storage tanks, that power that's there for those pumps, we have to have redundancy for, of course. Is that going to be broken out into electrical, into the CIP for electrical, or is it going to stay within water? So that distinction, I never really understood, even though there's one project in the back of here that has a generator on there. So I don't know where the limits of this report stop as we look at power and generated power. Just an observation, more or less. I think it could be put and could be solved with one sentence saying power and secondary are not part of these reports. And those can be found at the CIP for overhead or whatever.
Well, those in general should be spelled out in our city's emergency plan from that standpoint, but I look at, buying generators in a sense that is more of the operational equipment we need that we account for each year in the budget. And that could be something that could be referenced in the CIP, or again, it's something that's captured in a separate document to account for all the operational, like a fleet management type of, because we're really talking about infrastructure and capital outlay versus what we need operationally. So that could be another sort of plan that could be done to support the CIP here.
So your thoughts, Ryan, are to not include it in this, but you considered it an operational expense. I thought Brian's point was good because those gen sets are expensive, and I didn't know if that's a capital, and they have a lifespan.
Yeah,
I didn't know if it's.
My last city, we purchased generators with the ARPA money in that sense, but it was more out of the city's emergency plan
Okay.
versus what we needed to support operations itself.
Okay.
Because, just for instance, I was revisiting the city's emergency plan after the last winter storm, and that actually came out of the updated emergency plan to say, yeah, we need a generator for City Hall, we need a generator for this. So it's kind of the same similarities to running operations. We should have it in our city emergency plan, but also in a separate plan for our operational needs within public works and water.
Okay. So for now, we're going to leave it out with the understanding that it's in front of everybody. Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, can I speak to that for just a moment?
Yeah.
So, in keeping with your earlier comment about our purpose, my observation is not meant to critique that. As a CIP, I think this is fine. But what we've talked about several times in the past, and what is recommended by the American Water Works Association for small systems, as part of the rate-setting process, they recommend having every 5-year updated water master plan. And that master plan would include the CIP and the operational piece of it. We've never had that second piece, so I think maybe that's a future
Okay.
due out, but the way this has been structured is strictly capital improvements. So it's not a full, complete water master plan. We still have a hole in that. We're not talking as much as we should about backup or preventive maintenance. We're not talking about operational emergency considerations.
Okay.
There are other things that should be done in some format. It doesn't need to be this one.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's a good point, and I think just to keep this process moving, I agree that we don't need to include that here, but we certainly need to note it as part of a commission as something that is needed in the future, and it has been needed for quite a while.
Okay. Noted. I've got it down, and we can talk about this more as a future agenda
So
item.
again, yeah, like Brian alluded to, that, yeah, every 5 years is a good rule of thumb, but obviously annually, as we sort of hopefully check the box on these projects moving forward. And again, it's gonna be looked at every year during the annual budget process, because we gotta determine funds available, both general and water, to be able to dedicate to projects moving forward. So I think more intensely looked at annually. And again, you're hoping that after 5 years, you've checked the boxes off these projects, you know?
Yeah, the recommendation is, and the reason they have the recommendation for a 5-year time horizon is strictly to support rate setting, because the idea is you
Absolutely.
estimate what you're gonna need so you can set a stable rate over a longer period of time. We have always looked backwards and looked at our budgeting cycle and then built the rates off of that. And it's led to instabilities that as we grow, we may not want to continue that process.
Well, as I mentioned in the last meeting, this is gonna be another variable to determine that rate. But also, you know, we're gonna have a CIP for how we are going to manage water projects. But we're also gonna be a few months away from finishing the street CIP. So say 2028, we replace a water line on X street, we're gonna make sure in 29, that street's gonna be done to make sure it's re-asphalt and maintained. So there's gonna be that dual coordination moving forward.
Yeah, I think Kevin brings up a good point, and it's kind of a carryover from the last meeting about how he's talking about a water master plan. Inside that master plan, there'd be the O&M plan, there would also be the asset management plan piece of it. And as Kevin spoke at last meeting, that asset management plan of how you determine your conclusions inside of this, like condition indexes, like I think the Corps of Engineers uses linear segmentation. But whatever program you use to do asset management then leads you to the conclusion that you need to replace or rehabilitate these items within your system. And I think that was the part that Kevin was getting at last meeting. But overall, it goes into a master plan of that O&M or asset management along with your CIP. And so putting them all together, yes, this is a very good start. And we have more documents and more work to do to bring all that together so that we get ahead of this. And as you put at the end of this, it's not going to be cheap doing it. So
Okay.
the next, that was the next one, is just setting up an asset management plan so that we could determine rehab or replace on a lot of stuff. And then kind of more detailed notes that I had on there. I think one of them you mentioned, but on page 3-3, table 3.2, would like to see TCEQ requirements put onto that table. Sometimes they change, so just to get the snapshot on there of when it was. Another comment I had, would like to see A1 and A2 of the appendices have tabular data. You know, sometimes the map data is a little bit more difficult. I can do a little bit more with the spreadsheet on the A1 and A2. And then the final comment that I have is the strategy or priority of line replacement projects. I too wonder how we got to that conclusion. Was it conditions-based or was it regulation-based? You know, if you say we want to start out with 2-inch lines, I completely support that. I totally understand it. I just never saw it in the words in here. I never saw that, oh, we want to start out with 2-inch replacement lines because of fire safety. Because we're not meeting code, we can't spit it out of a 6-inch and go through the fire hydrant off a 2-inch. I totally understand if that was it. I got it. But I just, right now I'm wondering, okay, well, we had some easy kills, so we picked those first and we're going to go after them. But I don't know how you put them, how the projects went in there, prioritized.
Okay, so just a little more reasoning behind how these projects came up to the top or where they're at beyond aging infrastructure or fire flow compliance. But maybe, I think it may all be there, maybe it's just in my head and wasn't put in here, but we do have some reasoning behind all of that, and we can clarify that if needed.
Yeah, and some of them I could follow some of the logic in the back where it was just the aging infrastructure piece, like, oh, it's time to replace these, or approaching their end of usable life just based on age. Mm-hmm. You know, that condition index piece of, okay, they went out and assessed it, and now these valves are frozen, or these pipes are silted in, or whatever it is. You know, I'm left to guess. But then I also saw like, okay, we're out of code here. We got some 4-inch lines, we got some 2-inch lines, we're all over the place here trying to connect a 6-inch hydrant on it. Like,
Correct. There's some of those, there's some that are just over 50-year-old lines.
yeah,
And there are other projects down the line that they're not giving us issue now, but they will be hitting that 50-year mark, 50-plus years. We could monitor those, and maybe we decide to kick that down the road because there's not a lot of breaks at that time. But, you know, it's more of predictive on those types of things. Hey, this is getting out of age. Maybe a time to look at replacing those. So a lot of them are age triggers. Some of them are fire flow triggers, undersizings. There's a valve replacement project where the valves just aren't turning.
yeah.
So there's that type of thing too. But yes, they're very brief descriptions. I can see how that could be a little, not clear, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I had the same comment. Some of it was to expand maybe to a little more of a, just a rationale comment behind some of the projects, and maybe that refers to a paragraph that goes into a little more detail behind the rationale. Is that a reasonable thing to ask or to incorporate into this?
I think it's reasonable. We have a one line right now for descriptions. Let's make that a little more descript, you know,
All right.
a few sentences for that.
Okay.
And I think it would help paint a better picture.
Yeah, and I think that kind of makes sense, because you get 3 years down the road, I mean, we're all really sharp on this now because we've just read it, but you get 3 years down the road, you want to remember, you know, okay, when it's time for the city council to decide on these projects and appropriate the money, this was the foundation decision process, and, okay.
I saw in there that, you know, the standard, kind of wanting to go into that 909 PVC. What do we have now? I mean, do we have lead? Do we have asbestos line? Do we have concrete lined? I mean, what are we using for our transmissions?
It's in there.
There was a lead survey done in '24, I believe, and there was no lead found in any of the pipes, lead or copper, that lead copper trigger.
Yeah.
But we're good on that. It's really just old PVC, more brittle stuff that could be issues later on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there was a discussion here. There is a description of, unless it's not accurate, that this piping in the city is PVC or there's some ductile iron. That's the description in there.
Correct.
That's accurate as far as you all know.
To our knowledge, yes. Stephen had
Is it-
had Dwayne do a extensive survey, 18 months ago?
Yeah, we were required to do a service line inventory for the EPA to determine if there's any lead in our service lines or even on the side of the customer side. And ours all turned out to be basically PVC or older PVC or PEX. So all of our lines were good. We weren't classified as having any lead lines or mainly service lines. The majority of our water mains in the city are C909. There's a little percentage of maybe 10% C900, and then there's some older C900 that's kind of a white colored main that's predominantly in forest waters and from maybe Gloxinia all the way to Meadowrue, not Meadowrue, but Magic Falls. And that type of line, usually whenever it breaks, it doesn't do a circular break, it doesn't stay confined, it'll do the whole 20-foot section. And then sometimes it'll go into the other 20-foot section. So we've replaced 40-foot of water main before in just one break. So those are the ones that are the ones we worry about the most. But pretty much I would say about 90 to 95% is probably C909, 5% maybe ductile iron that runs in front of 2252 from Bat Cale all the way to Hickory Bend. And like I said, the worst main we have is like Forest Waters and that little section between Gloxinia and Magic Falls, Paradise Pass, all that area.
So where are we left on this? Is it a question of do we know what's in the ground? Is that the question?
I think Stephen knows what's in the ground. I think he has a good idea.
Okay.
I couldn't tell from this report. I just got the pipe ages and the sizes. So I don't know how I would get that out of this report.
Yeah. So maybe kind of put up a tally of which type of main that we have and just about a percentage of what it covers to just give an idea of how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, it could all go into the strategy too. Like if you want to get rid of all ductile iron, so you don't have fittings of ductile iron or valves of ductile iron, then we may target that first in your first project. Say that's your first capital improvement project. We're going to 909 over here. That would be one way to do it.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. I think a lot of the first 5 years was the older PVC, so,
Yeah.
you know, that would be definitely the higher
Okay.
priority.
Yeah, it seems like this and the prior discussion are a little bit more about, I mean, there's a lot of data that's actually available, and whether it's able to be referred to or condensed in a tabular form, I think that's good, because that snapshot then, when we go back, like I said later, it'll all be in front of us. Reasonable thing to ask, is that doable?
You sound
Okay,
reasonable, yeah.
Good, all right. I had a question on the pressure plane. That's the big nut to crack. I think it's a $7 million investment. The consequences of a water main break down near Bracken are pretty catastrophic because so much water spews out, and that plane was to help address that, better balance the pressures in the city. Are there other technical options besides constructing, basically, it's a second pressure system within the city from an engineering standpoint, that I don't know if that would hold this document up and in a secondary review, because that's very expensive, but yet that's an area of the city that's going to be getting more development at high pressure, I mean, really high pressure. And so that's my question. Are there, besides doing this, are there other technical options?
We did discuss the potential of doing a whole bunch of pressure-reducing valves across the system, and that in itself has some challenges along with that. I mean, now you have maintenance issues, and they are spread out in many, many locations as well. So it becomes an operational challenge to keep all of those running and up to date, and annual inspections and all of that kind of stuff. So you're kind of it may be cheaper up front, but now you're having to add all this additional maintenance side of things and operational work burden, I guess you would say.
I'd like to suggest that stay in the plan for now, but as a future agenda item of the Water Commission and the engineering company to explore those options in more detail, because like I said, it's listed as way further down the road, but it's also a very expensive option, and it puts a water tower in our only city park. So to me, it says there's some things we should be looking at there. Noted. For me, no action unless the commission has a different feeling about that. Okay. Gentlemen, other comments from anybody else? Steve?
Yeah, my comments are primarily around Section 2, the growth assumptions. And later on in Section 6.1, there's acknowledgement that there will be slower growth due to land constraints. And I guess the first question I had is, do we have enough land to accommodate all the connections shown in the table 2.2 that's run out for 20 years? I mean, I don't know what the,
A lot of the connections are really going to be equivalent connections, so it's going to be a lot of commercial and industrial.
that was another question I had, commercial versus residential. Obviously, commercial larger users and those sort of balance. And it also said slower growth rate, and if the 1.23% growth rate based upon the last 10-year average, and if you use like the last 5, it's 0.46%. And my question is, how sensitive is the model to changes in those growth assumptions? Are we talking about, just rounding errors, or is it significant that would affect the projections, the future costs, just, you know, the whole model? Because I got to believe that those growth assumptions drive a lot of the answers that are in the model, so.
In our case, the growth doesn't necessarily affect the model as a whole. It's more of where the growth is happening. So you're having a lot of localized growth along FM 2252, and I think that's driving a lot of strain on the system more than anything, rather
Okay.
than the growth rate
That's-
itself.
All right, so whether it's the 1.23 or 0.5 or whatever, you're gonna come to essentially the same answer.
Would you agree with that? Yeah, McKinley did a lot of the modeling, so I'm getting her head nodding over here, so that's correct.
Yeah, okay. All right. Usage to test the model. Oh, then on page 4-2, you say this assumption should be reevaluated to refine the distribution of water demands, ideally by using actual customer demand data collected on the system. Did we have any comparison to actual usage against the model?
Yes, we used usage reports to help with this model building.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. All right, I think those were mine. Thank you.
Of course.
All right, well, I mean, most everything I had noted has already been mentioned, so I'll just first say that I think a lot of work's been done, looks really good, and I may be the only one up here that saw the last one, and it's way, way better, especially the modeling information in here, so I appreciate that. I guess one recommendation maybe to address the priorities that were discussed, or the logic, and put the words in as you want, but maybe on the table, consider adding, at least for the near-term horizon projects, adding like a priority, like, you know, an ABC type priority, and define what that is, and then possibly a risk statement, like if not done, what's the level of risk? May help the council then decide if they have to draw a cut line somewhere, which ones they want to use. And then really minor, because it's in the text, you talk about it's the engineer probable cost is based on current market pricing. I just think on the tables where that's listed, you should note that just all dollars are current year dollars or something along those lines, just for clarity's sake. But with everything else said, I think it's a good document, and with the understanding that those minor changes would be worked, I don't see any reason that we wouldn't push it forward, let the council start looking at it. It looks pretty good to me as a CIP.
Great discussion. Thank you. The technical strength of the commission is showing up, and a lot of diligence. I'd like to suggest at this point, unless there's any concerns with the comments that have been given, that these be incorporated. And I may need some guidance here, Marissa. I don't know if this is a commission votable item, or is it a consensus, because it is a vote. Okay. We move forward. So I would request a motion structured somewhere along the lines of this, with the changes that have been requested to Tri-Hydro, that this document then be presented next to City Council, which would be February. And the fact is, the commission does not meet in February, so we wouldn't meet in March, so there would be a 60-day hiatus. That's one reason why I'd like to ask that it proceed on this basis. That puts it in front of the commission, puts it in front of Brian for budgetary purposes, and a lot of things happen from that. If that's a reasonable way to proceed, looking for some creative words.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the 2025 to 2045 water system capital improvement plan for the city of Garden Ridge as presented by Tri-Hydro be forwarded to the city council for their action, along with the changes that have been discussed this evening.
Well done, thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second. I won't try and recapture that, because several people I know have written it down, regarding the 2025 to 2045 water capital improvement plan with the changes that have been discussed with Tri-Hydro tonight. Any discussions on that?
I'm sorry, I just would comment that the reason I phrased it that way is even if it went up as is, I think it's fine for the city council. It will just be better with those changes. That's why I was willing to make that motion in that way.
Understood, thank you. There being no further discussion, call for a vote. All in favor of the motion as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you so much. Nice job. Okay, next we're going to move on to item 4, which is the wastewater ordinance. We received a rough first draft at the last meeting and a much more refined draft. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Tri-Hydro to give us a kind of a briefing and a summary of the sources of the document, its construction, and then we'll go into a question session.
Thanks,
you.
Commissioner. Yeah, the intent of this ordinance is really just to guide development, clarify responsibilities, including restrictions, which is on industrial waste and pollutants, to really give that the teeth that are needed to make sure people are doing things responsibly and everyone knows who's responsible for what. So the conceptualization of this was basically we were tasked to go look at surrounding cities or cities within the state of Texas with a focus on surrounding cities and see what they're doing. Rather than recreating the wheel, just go see what works for them and what may work for the city of Garden Ridge. So we gathered bits and pieces from many municipalities. We looked at Lytle, Bernie, Castroville, Schertz, to kind of develop this, and basically sent this list of, hey, we think that these ordinances will work, and had legal draft something up for us. So that last month, that document that you saw was legal's first stab at it, and we hadn't quite refined it yet. So there was some molding of things around and making sure that things flowed a little better, and there was no duplicate information. So we believe this document is a lot closer. There's pieces of this that are, I think, a great add in the sense that we're looking to connect to Schertz or convey through Schertz to CCMA for our sewer. So the industrial waste guidelines are in conformance with what Schertz would be looking at or what CCMA would require, so that we're making sure that we're providing them the same quality of wastewater that they're getting. There were some items that we still want to look a little deeper into. The first one that is up for discussion is basically section 1.01, which is the adoption of the wastewater design standards of NBU. Rather than starting from scratch and creating our own, why not look to a surrounding organization that does this quite well, that already has developed standards, and see if it works for us. We believe that NBU would be a little better than, say, SAWS, because SAWS is a much larger organization with many more complexities. New Braunfels is large. New Braunfels Utilities is a large organization. They have a full engineering department that have developed these out, but they're in Comal County, and it's a little more easy to grab onto from a development standpoint. I believe they do a good job there. So that's kind of the piece that is our recommendation is section 1.01. And there also were some sections in here that were more suggestions about, for section 205, for example, is the street repair deposit. Is that something that we want to require of a private installment? Do they need to deposit something to the city, or is that something that may not fit our community? There's also a financing program, which is section 3.07. That one could really go either way. Is that something that we're looking to do in Garden Ridge? And then really, section 6 at the end is the penalty structure. Do those fees make sense for Garden Ridge? They could be a little more, a little less. It just depends on how we want to go about things. But, you know, generally, we're hitting on a lot of pieces here. You know, what do you do if it defines in here, what if your septic goes out and there's a sewer line in front of your house? And this basically guides them to, well, you need to connect into the sewer that's in front of your house, rather than repairing your septic. So there's guidance on that type of thing too. So, you know, I'm happy to go through all these pieces. I'll definitely open it up for questions first, but, yeah, leave it to the floor.
Okay, thanks, Hank. I did ask the city for some guidance on the subject of definitions, the order of things, and with the plans for the city to codify and digitize our ordinances, that it's not required in any particular order, or that there actually be a section on definitions, and things don't necessarily just have to flow perfectly. That I'm going to suggest that what we're looking at here is a review of the technical content. Does it cover what we need to have done? And I mentioned this to Tri-Hydro earlier, that this community is very septic oriented. We think of waste disposal, we think of septic tanks. Well, we have a buried sewer line. Well, it's coming to life now. Is this interface, and I did raise this question, that if you're within 300 lines of a sewer, 300 feet of a sewer line, and your septic gives up the ghost, do you get an aerobic, or are you going to be required to connect? So I'm going to ask the commission to kind of put on your Garden Ridge hat and think about how that all fits in. And with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion.
I don't have a new one, but I had some questions about the connections. And we have several people on Nacogdoches who have existing septics, and there are some very old structures along there. If someone buys it, do they just hook into the existing septic, or is there some inspection? I mean, do we look at capacity of the system? Do we look at age? Do we look at, is it functioning? Does it meet TCEQ requirements? And Stephen, do we have our own jurisdiction over septic, or is that still under TCEQ? Has it been delegated?
County jurisdiction currently in Garden
Okay,
Ridge.
so the county, then they have the jurisdiction over
I believe it, though, that if,
it
say you got,
flows.
I do believe if you have the old concrete style and something goes wrong with it, you have to automatically upgrade to aerobic system.
Okay. But especially on Nacogdoches, when we start connecting all those people, do they connect automatically? Do they have grease traps in the restaurants? Does the existing septic meet standards, or do they need to connect? And I didn't see a system where it says, hey, we're gonna go out. I don't know how well that would be met, but do we go out and take a look at some of those existing systems, and are they just been adopted from what was there when the person purchased the old building or whatever, or has it been upgraded?
So currently, septic inspection is done by Comal County we have an interlocal agreement with them. So that would run through them, and I guess that could be something we look more into this is how does that all interchange if they're being forced in the city to go to a connection with the force main or whatever the case. But when you're going into, say you're extending a sewer force main or gravity main, whatever it is, you can, as part of a capital improvement project, we can connect or add a sewer lateral such that private properties can connect to it. So that could be part of the program that you develop out. As far as a program on inspection of quality or of condition, that's currently not a program, at least I don't believe it is, Stephen. I know that you sometimes do get called in on some septics that are having issues, but that's not an active program to go out and inspect and say you need to connect into our system or not. But that's something that could be explored in the future.
I mean, that is, you know, very much the central issue in Garden Ridge, is that if a septic system is acting up, who decides it? Is the county? I mean, you all know what one looks like when it acts up, but who actually has the authority? And then what's the chain of events to either you replace it or we're going to make you connect if you're within the required distance? I'd like to have a little discussion on that, because I think that's a really important point, because so much of our, I'm trying to think of specific places that, without naming businesses, but are there businesses in existence that would be within 300 feet of that line?
A lot of restaurants.
Exi-
along Nacogdoches. As you go down that road. there have-
Caparelli's.
But are they in Garden Ridge? I don't think so.
Yeah, some, at least some of them.
Okay, all right,
It's Bracken.
okay. Okay. I guess the question, part of the question is here, who does the wording changes? I mean, we know what we do when we want to change an ordinance. We agree and we hammer it together here and review it with legal's assistant. In this case, do you want written input on specific wording, or do you think you have enough of an understanding of this? Because, you know, we're really mixing some establishments that have aging systems. I mean, it's a very valid point with this system that we're ready to bring to life. And the process for how you might determine that in a correct business and legal manner is fairly important for a few businesses. New ones, it's pretty clear.
I think with an understanding of process, or what the intent is of what we want to achieve, we could work with legal to get this
Okay.
revised.
Okay. Related to the same thing, there's a number chosen of 300 feet, and I've asked this question before, is there any need to review that number? Is it a good starting point? Because there are areas of development that could theoretically be 300 feet from our current sewer line, or does this anticipate that the line might grow to reach to within 300 feet?
It is for future extension, should it be within 300 feet. And the 300-foot marker is more of looking at what other cities are doing.
Okay.
We've seen it range between 200 and 500 across the state, and 300 seem to be pretty well in line with what other municipalities are stating. Now, if there's a large development that comes in and they want to connect into our sewer, then and they're 1,000 foot away, then those discussions may go a little different with them on how we achieve that. But that will be worked through an agreement.
That was precisely my question, is that does somebody hang their hat on 300 feet, or is it a normal part of the discussion saying, you know, this, either we're going to reach out to you or we're going to work it out, but either way, you're not going to get your permit until you connect to our sewer system. I mean, I just want to avoid a corner in the future that could be a problem. Ryan, I'm kind of looking at for your guidance on that. I mean, a distance should be in there for starters.
I think as we
just wanna-
discussed earlier, some of these things we're setting up for things we're going to have to address. Again, when we start talking about development on 2252 and 3009, there's going to be discussion probably with anyone developing about infrastructure. And then, again, what we will be doing, working with Schertz to provide that service through an agreement as well. That's gonna be forthcoming.
Okay.
And developments want sewer. It's beneficial to everybody to have a sewer connection. And if there's something a little farther than 300 feet away, then that's something that typically we work through in an agreement setup style.
Two questions. Yeah, you just led me into one of them. So the Shirts connection, I think that was discussed before as an option going, I guess, under the railroad tracks where the current site is and connecting somehow. Is there any more information on what that looks like a timeline? Is that built into the capital improvement plan? All those types of things.
We're in the agreement discussions with them on it. We've had some great discussions over the past, we had a meeting with them in December on what that would look like, and Shirts is actually working on the draft for that for us to review. They did tell us they would have it at the end of the month, so we're hoping to see something soon from them, and we're actively working on that aspect of it. So what the big holdup there on their side is they're doing a capital improvement on Lookout Road where they're upsizing a sewer line, which would allow them to accept flow from us, where what's discussed at this time is up to 745 or 750 living unit equivalents, basically the amount of sewer flow that you would get from 745 homes, whether that be used for commercial or industrial, whatever. So that's kind of what we're working through them to accept sewer through the southern 2252 corridor, if you will. So the triggers for them is going to be getting that CIP kicked off. They're having some, they're held up on easement acquisition right now, but it's a project, it's happening, and they're wanting to start construction on that. So there are some pieces that do have to fall in place first, but we're trying to get ahead of it with this agreement so that we can continue to have those discussions, talk about what kind of cost it's going to take for connecting to their sewer manhole that's just south of the railroad tracks on Dare Lane, and go from there for getting us off of a pump and haul system.
Okay, great. And then second question for Ryan. I think we brought it up before, we didn't really have clarity yet. Where is this falling from like a budget perspective? So like the revenue from a sewer system, a wastewater system, is that falling underwater? Is that falling under general fund? Is it its own thing?
Well, what I would like to add too is anytime we are talking about development, you know, a developer is gonna be doing its due diligence, which is sort of currently underway in some of the properties along 2252 right now. And so that's when we will get to the point to where they've done their due diligence. What does the utilities look like? What can the city do? Those kind of things. So those are all part of assistance. Sometimes cities or utility systems help with incentivizing development. So we're not there yet. We could be at some point, and that might be a request for that. Now, revenue-wise, as we get further in, it's going to determine, we have discussion on there about the impact fees, potentially. We're looking at addressing our permit fees in the next couple of months, the city council, relative to both residential but commercial as well, because we're well under what the commercial is for utilities and development itself. So all of that'll be brought forward, but general fund revenues, we're hoping to increase that side, thus increasing with sales tax, with development and so on. But when you start talking about water CIP projects, you're looking at the water fund, how much we have in reserve, and what that debt capacity looks like in the future to be able to address these projects. Which again, come back to the variables to set that rate. So, does that
Okay, so
answer?
wastewater, though, the revenue from a septic system or a sewer system, where does it flow to? Is that something that water encompasses overall that we account for in our annual budget, or does this go to its own line item?
I would probably say from an operational standpoint, we'd have to establish a fund from that standpoint. Because it would be sort of along the lines of what water is an enterprise fund, or what we hope to be in is an enterprise fund, a self-sustaining fund. So probably in this sense, yes, it probably, sewer would be the same sense with the water.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling through this, I don't think it mentions anything about that. So is that something we want to add to the ordinance of defining what it is, right? Like the water, it's their own water company, we run our own fund. Is that something similar that we want to have, like a paragraph on that in this ordinance as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, as Hank mentioned, that this ordinance is a combination of sort of best practices and what other water systems use or municipalities. And, you know, sometimes they're funded differently. It depends on the utility system, how it's funded, in those kind of sense. But we're doing a lot of things to set us up for the future, right? So I think we'll cross those bridge when we get there, as far as how that would be spelled out to fund. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be in this ordinance right now, but it's definitely something that could be amended in the future to address that.
Okay.
I hope that helps. I mean, that's,
Yeah, just trying to get clear. I mean, if we're gonna establish a wastewater ordinance and system, we should know where the money's going
yeah.
and how it's being funded. So that should be
Yeah, I
established.
mean, again, you're talking about a lot of things that's gonna drive, being development that's gonna drive a lot of things on 2252. So it's trying to put these pieces in place to make sure we have it ready when those things happen.
Yeah, just a comment or a point of position here with the commission that at least my thought was the goal is this is I guess we'd call it primarily a technical ordinance. It defines the specifications for the work. It does definitely say what's out of bounds. I've got some comments on that, offenses and penalties, but I think in terms of the structure of a financial system, I think that might be somewhere else. Or we'll circle back, but we're certainly on record with your comments. And I have two things, and that is throughout this, there are references made to rules and regulations as they exist for the city of Garden Ridge. And Garden Ridge, as we've talked a little bit, doesn't have a lot of these guidelines. Like it makes reference someplace to, sewer guidelines by the city of Garden Ridge, road specifications. I'd like, just as you've chosen, I think correctly, to list New Braunfels with all of their resources as the sort of the design spec that we work to, is either take these items out or refer to a national standard, or just remove it, because I think right now it refers to things that don't exist. And let's not pile too many of those on to be dealt with later. Let's just get them out of there. And if we come up later with standards for that, we can incorporate them in there. And I won't try and find them right now. A person who repairs a private lateral or installs a new or rehabilitated private lateral will do this as prescribed by the City of Garden Ridge standards. We don't have one of those. And remove it. But if there's another suitable standard, like by New Braunfels, I'm sure they have all kinds of words about how you run laterals, reference that. That would be, I think, a required change. Otherwise, we end up in corners over things. The other has to do with offenses and penalties. They need to be in there, but I'd ask that you work with your legal or our legal to hammer out a concise paragraph that maybe summarizes what are offenses and what are the penalties. It is not uncommon for us to have penalties in our ordinances, so I don't think that's out of line to have them in here. So if that's acceptable, those are my comments for right now. Others?
I would ask that you look at the TCEQ requirements for septic and sewage. They might have those, and it might be easier to reference that, and it may go back, it probably goes back to a national standard somewhere.
Correct. We can check and put TCEQ where appropriate. I think that there are good opportunities for that, and we're also working on some other documents concurrently. We're working on a public works specifications manual that's in the works, but it's not here yet, and I think, to your point, until that is real, we probably should not mention it in this ordinance.
Just one question about using New Braunfels standards. Inside there, does CCMA or does Schertz have an issue with using those standards? Or why wouldn't we use Schertz's design standards? If we're connecting to Schertz.
We could look into Schertz's standards. MBU is one that I'm particularly used to, and
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with it. So from a development review standpoint, it's something that would be recommended from my standpoint, but we don't necessarily need to go that route. Now, we do reference in here for CCMA standards to be met for the industrial waste side of things, but not necessarily for design criteria, if you will. But if you want us to look into shirts as an option, then we can do that.
Yeah. Comment on, some of this is a direct lift out of shirts. I read their ordinance, and I think they reference New Braunfels in their own ordinance. That's when because I initially had circled that myself, and then I realized that the church was doing the same thing, I think for the same reasons. I think I'm right on that. I don't have the shirts ordinance in front of me, but I think they follow New Braunfels, because part of New Braunfels swirls down through shirts. Their wastewater map footprint goes down through there. So, but if you could check that, but other than that, Orion's gonna have to hire a bunch of engineers to.
Just, I guess, big picture question. When this project was first briefed, and the way I understand it, that every bit of it is forced main, right? I mean, that's why we have the grinder pumps and everything else. Do the lines themselves that feed down to the collection tank, would they support a gravity drain connection? Or it all has to be forced, right? Forced main?
Correct.
That's my question.
That's correct, at this time. Now, there could be in the future some sort of gravity function, so, but through a forced main, it does have a different type of service connection. You would need to have a grinder pump system, basically on your property, and then that would be forced into the main.
So the reason I asked that is when this was first briefed, it was briefed for the commercial development along 2252 in that corridor, and it was not intended for residential use, and it's unclear to me in the way this ordinance is written whether or not, if there was a residence within 300 feet, whether or not they would be required to connect. And I think that would have a hard time getting through the community if that were the case. My recollection, the last time this came up, is even the word sewer was not well received. For the very reasons that you cited, because Comal County runs the septic program, you get your own little license, and it's just one more layer of cost in government. I just don't see, I think we probably want to make clear that this is for business, industrial, commercial type application, and include residential in the exception, unless I'm misreading it.
No, I think that's a fair comment. It's a different version of, I think, what a couple of others have asked, that you know, so you're referring to like residences along Nacogdoches Loop. They're for sure on septics. Would they be, now financially they might want to choose a sewer connection, but would they be required to connect? Is that your question, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't think the ordinance should be worded in such a way that it implies or could be read that a residential customer would be required to do it. If they choose, or if a development comes in that chooses to do that, that's different, but the way I read it, it would be required, and I'm not sure that's what we meant. I'm not opposed to sewer, I'll say that out front, but I know many of my neighbors that would be quite upset by that proposal. So, that's one of the things, when we talk about New Braunfels standards, obviously that covers a wide range of systems that we don't have. So, again, I have no problem listing them, but we probably need to point out what parts we're talking about. We're talking about forced main commercial industrial connection. If that's all we're talking about, I think we need to say that. If we are looking towards the future where we might have developments, residential developments or mixed-use developments that would want to connect, then that's fine. We can say that too, but that may be one of those bridges for the future. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking the question.
And relative to Kevin's comment about the term sewer being a hot button, I noticed in section 3.04, it seems like sanitary sewer system and private lateral are used sort of interchangeably. And are those two separate things? Are they talking about the same thing in that section? The sanitary sewer system, the same thing as a private lateral?
They are this, I mean, basically a private lateral becomes part of the sanitary
Okay,
sewer
I would
system.
recommend then conforming those terms in that section, so it's clear we're talking about the same thing and not two separate setups there.
I'd like to make a suggestion on this issue of septic, try and maybe address all of this together, and that is the number of properties we're talking about that, unless the city puts in a whole sewer system throughout, you know, in the future, but the given condition, we're probably talking about a dozen existing homes that this be written to say there be, if a septic system within the connection distance needs replacement, that it's not required, but that it would be an optional possibility, something like that, and then sort of leave septics alone. We're not talking about a great number of structures, but it does raise another question, which is mixed use. We all understand industry. A restaurant comes in, it's got to have a food grinder and all this and that, but this would also include say there's high-density housing built somewhere like along the railroad tracks in the future and would tap into that. They would most certainly be required to connect into that. That's not clear that that's picked up under the industrial clause here, which tends to focus on heavy metals and things like that. Is it appropriate to industrial slash high-density residential? I'm not even sure what the right choice of words are, but we know what that is, which is if we do have high-density housing, most certainly it's going to be in that area, and it most certainly is going to need to go to a sewer.
You're basically asking for clarification on
Yeah.
usage, that it incorporates more
Yeah.
usage than just an
Yeah.
industrial usage.
So two things, that and then also maybe remove the required aspect for septics. That, and if you're grandfathered in before this date and your septic goes out, you can either replace it or you can talk to the city about connecting to the sewer if it's feasible. Does that seem like a reasonable position for everybody? Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, the timeline of this is not nearly as the CIP, which we really worked through and got that done. If we could ask that Tri-Hydro look at this, and we'll put it on the agenda for the March meeting and revisit another draft, and we'll continue to work away at it until we get something. And I think also all of us become more familiar with the wastewater ordinance as this starts to converge, and our comments can continue to be helpful to you. Is that acceptable
No,
to you, Ryan? Okay.
Appreciate the feedback, and that's the purpose of this, was really to present something that's
Okay.
kind of mushed together, and now we're here to make it Garden Ridges, so appreciate it.
Okay. That completes our business item. Future agenda items, I have, this would be for the March meeting, the wastewater ordinance. Anything else, commissioners, that you would like to have added? Okay. Item 5, citizen comment period. Any speakers? No? Well, that concludes all the items on the agenda. The meeting's adjourned at 7:18. Thank you.